Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. This is Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Mentor Select serves parents who are raising teens. Every week, Derek interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. All while parenting them to be successful adults, focusing on social and emotional development, something that's left out of the classroom, but not in ours. Be sure to subscribe, share, and rate. This is Mentor Select, and this is your host, Derek Phillips.
All right, parents, you're in for a great treat today. We have the president and CEO of StandoutX, John Walsh, joining us. How are you, John?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Happy you can make some time for the Mentor Select audience.
Of course. I think you had Sergeant Robert Walsh on your last show, and so now you've got John Walsh. So I think you're working through the entire Walsh tribe here.
Slowly but surely.
We'll see who your next guest is.
See if I can find another Walsh. Indeed. So, John, where are you joining us from today?
I am in just outside of Orlando, Florida.
Okay. All right. I was just in Clearwater. Flew into Tampa, but spent some time in Clearwater a couple weeks ago. So it was nice.
It's hot. It's hot.
It's very humid.
It's just hot.
Very humid for sure. But we definitely had a good time, a much needed vacation.
Good for you.
Indeed. Good. So, John, I know you've just have a really remarkable story. I'm going to let you give you some time to delve into that. But can you tell us kind of just a little bit about your background?
Yeah, my background is pretty interesting. I've had many failures and successes, and then more failures and more successes. And I think it's very much, for parents out there and maybe even kids out there, it's all ups and downs. And so, the short story, and we can get into some of the longer details of this, but the short story was I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., and my parents got divorced when it was early. And a lot of people get divorced, so that's not really a big thing, but I think the way I handled it was a little bit poor. And so in my senior year of high school, I found myself homeless. Wow. And so imagine being a senior in high school and, not having a place to live, not really, having direction or anything else. I may have gone to school some days. I may not. I don't know how I graduated. I think someone must have called. Someone must have called on my behalf and said, "Hey, let's just let this kid go on." And my homelessness journey, kind of off and on, happened even after I had graduated. And I'm using graduated very loosely, but so I had early challenges in my life, and I probably spent the better part of, 8, 9 years, I was going to be a DJ and okay. I was going to work in a radio station, and then I was going to fly airplanes, and then
you had it all figured out.
Yeah, I had it all figured out. Yeah. And my stepfather is in the music industry. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll do that. So I tried to, work into that infield. I just tried literally everything. Right. And so, I ended up sort of getting my life together, and at a later age, in my late 20s, ended up going to college. Now, this was after I had attempted college multiple years before that, and I had a 0.00 GPA at one point in my early 20s.
That's a record.
Yeah, I set the record for the cleanest GPA in history, I think. But I ended up going to the University of Virginia, which is a tough school to get into, and I graduated with honors. Got a job with Disney coming out of school there, and I had this formula for success. I think, which is kind of what's in my book, but it took me from being an intern to an executive in about 8.5 years, almost 9 years.
Wow.
So I was an executive for Disney for a while. I spent 18 years with Disney down here in Florida, but I led teams that were global.
Okay.
Which was a lot of fun. Disney moved me up to New York City so I could be a part of the launch team for Disney Plus. So some of your listeners may may have Disney Plus on their phones, on their TV or whatever else, but I was part of the launch team there.
Oh, wow.
In finance and
I have
strategy.
Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's a great tool. It's
It
a really
is.
great
I know
job.
who to thank now for it.
Yeah, it wasn't me. It was everybody else working so hard. But I was there as the vice president of finance and strategy for a little bit. And then Madison Square Garden pulled me away, and I moved over and became the senior vice president of finance and strategy for Madison Square Garden. And I don't know if you know, but Madison Square Garden has obviously the Garden, but they also have Radio City Music Hall, Chicago Theater, the Forum in LA.
Oh, wow.
And then they're building the state-of-the-art billion-dollar arena in Vegas called the Sphere, which is this like all immersive experience, which is just going to change how we think about entertainment. So I was there for a couple of years. So, here's a kid who was homeless in high school, finds himself up in New York City as the senior vice president for Madison Square Garden through Disney. So it's kind of
only in America.
Only in America. So I mean, like, look, if I can do it, I'm telling you, with the right help, the right guidance, anybody can do it. But I recently left my job there, and I started my own company because I really believe in giving back. And so I'm here to help students, young professionals. That's what my company does. We're here to train, develop, prepare students, young professionals for life during and after school.
Wow. Fantastic. Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there.
That's a lot there. So there you go. Let's start. Where do you want to start?
That's a lot to unpack, certainly. I think the first thing that resonates with me is in terms of you being homeless your senior year of high school. And the reason it resonates with me is my mother and I were homeless when I was 11 for a time period. And during that time, being homeless sucks. But in hindsight, I realized like just how much I learned about myself and how much I realized that as humans, we really don't need a lot to survive. Food, shelter, and for us, that shelter was our van. But we were able to survive it. But we also, my mom, she just, during that time period, she just made sure that I kind of focused on the future and just my vision of how successful I was going to be and all of the nice things I was going to have. And just that took my mind away from my circumstances and played a big role in my success, I think, further down the road. For you, I know you mentioned, okay, you're homeless, and then that time period where you thought you were going to be a DJ and just bouncing around as far as different career ideas. Once you got to the University of Virginia, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, once you got there, what was that turning point for you where previously college didn't work out for you? You had the world record for the cleanest GPA, and then you go from graduating with honors. What was that turning point?
Well, first of all, bravo to you and your mom. I think we're kindred spirits here. We know what it's like to be lost and not have a home,
Right.
And I'm not talking about having a house, a home, because, the beauty of what it sounds like with you and your mom, and one thing, you had your mom, and how important parents, and I think, and I'm a parent. I have 3 kids myself, beautiful children. And I think we undervalue the importance of parenthood, right? And how difficult it is, but how important it is. And it is the ultimate leadership position. And your kids are watching you every day. No matter what you tell them, they're watching what you do, how you do it. And it sounds like your mom, I don't know if you know this or not, but there was a Harvard study that said that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You're going to be the average income. The average rate. And it sounds like with you and your mom. So bravo to her for, sticking with it, being with you, you guys fighting it together. I mean, I'm proud of you and what you guys did. It's difficult, so you know that.
Appreciate it. Yeah,
I like to think that there was a turning point for me, and I know a lot of people in our space and thought leader space or leadership space, whatever you want to call us. I think a lot of people have a story of like a near-death experience or an aha moment or whatever. I didn't. I think it was unlike most people, which is it took me time to figure it out, and that's one of the things I write about in my book. It's like, it's okay to take that time to figure it out. And so that's what I did is I took my time to figure it out. I didn't know it at the time I was doing that. But that's what I did. And I think, there's also a level of confidence. Like there got to be a point where I was working at a law firm because I was going to be a lawyer too at one point. So I was working for a law firm, and that was my last job before I went to school. And there was a period where I got a little bit of confidence to say, you know what, I actually am smarter than I think. and I actually can do something more than what I'm doing. And I think, I had a mentor and a couple of lawyer friends that really pushed me to think that way. And so, as parents, as leaders, as whatever, I think, that's the biggest influence on kids. So I, as a young kid back then, I had people that believed in me, gave me a little bit of confidence, and I ended up taking one class at a community college and got an A. And then it was 2 classes, and then it was 4 classes, and before I knew it, I had
confidence.
confidence. I had straight A. I mean, confidence, hard work, and support from people around me. And I just, it took time, right? It took some time. It took some figuring out. But I went from a 0.00 GPA to a 4.00 GPA student. And then, I went to the University of Virginia, and then I think I was on my way from there, so it was a gradual thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And going back to something you mentioned as far as being a parent, how that's really the most important leadership role that we'll ever have. I totally agree with that, because sometimes you see people, they don't have that balance where maybe they have this great career, but their family's falling apart. And I really think it's so important for, to treat that as just, hey, that's their most important leadership role above all else.
I'll share a story about that real quick about parenthood and career. So think about my story as a homeless kid in high school, and I had made it to, let's call it the pinnacle of my career, or the whatever you want to call it, the senior vice president, Madison Square Garden, the mecca of sports, the world's most famous arena in New York City. And I had been through a divorce, a couple of years ago, and so my daughter was. I was up in New York, and my ex was down here in Florida. And so my daughter had come up to see me. This was a couple of years ago. She had come up to see me in New York for spring break. And we had a great spring break. It was fantastic. I write about this in my book. It's kind of a changing point for me. And I was going to put her on the plane. She's 12, 10 at the time. So I was going to put her on the plane to fly back to Orlando. And we went to JFK, and I remember I walked her to the gate, and the gate agent takes her. She's got the special lanyard around her neck that she's a kid traveling alone.
Right.
And I remember she got on the plane, and I'm sitting there, and I watched and it starts to snow a little bit. This was mid-March in New York. And the plane starts to back away, and it starts to snow a little bit harder. And I watched the plane go over. It was snowing so hard it had to get de-iced. And so the plane gets de-iced. It goes to the very end of the runway. I could barely see it. And the plane starts to, taxi down the runway, and it lifts off into the air, and probably 50 feet or so, the plane just disappears because the cloud cover was so low, and it was snowing so hard. It was crazy. And I just thought about my daughter being on the plane, flying through the snowstorm. And I turned around to walk away, and in JFK, there's it's like a circle, right? Where there's like all these gates that are kind of around the circle. And I was in the middle, and I don't know what it was, but I had to sit down on the floor, and I lost it. I was crying harder than I've ever cried. And because I was like, what am I doing? I've got this job. I've fought so hard to get this career. I have the title. I have the company. I have more money than I could possibly think of. I've made it, right? But here I am putting my daughter on the plane, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And when I compare that moment to when I was homeless in high school, that moment was by far 100 times worse than any moment I've felt when I was homeless. And so It was at that point where I decided exactly what you were saying. So it's a long story. I'm sorry, but it's a long story to say that's when I made the decision. I'm going to walk away from this 20-year career that I've built, and I'm going to finish writing this book. I'm going to launch this business. And if I can help one other person not make the same mistakes that I've made, be successful. I talk about holistic success in my book, be successful in life, in family, in spirit, in career, and everything else. Well, then that is exactly what I'm going to do. And that's why I'm here talking to you today.
Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful message. I'm sure perhaps a lot of parents listening to can at least relate to, or may find themselves in that similar situation. And when something like that happens, you just never know when it's going to hit you.
Never know. That's right.
Yeah. Usually it's in the most inconvenient place.
It was, and I had a lady come up to me like, "Sir, are you okay? Are you okay?" And like I couldn't get the words out, and
Wow.
like I think she thought I was hurt, and she was like picking up her phone to call 911, and I'm like, no, it's all good. And so, but now I'm down here in Florida, and I'm here with my daughter and my wife, who was living down here at the time. I was traveling back and forth from New York to Orlando.
Okay.
I'm telling you, it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how much title. It's about, you obviously have to have a comfortable living. I'm not going to tell any of your listeners to don't go after your dreams, and don't take all that you deserve, and that the value that's really owed to you. But you can't do it as a give up in somewhere else in life. Yeah. It has to be complete.
Like I said, a holistic success.
That's right.
Like that a lot.
I like to think of a tire, right? And if there's a portion of the tire that's flat, like your tire is your health, your career, your environment, your spiritual life, your family, your friends, the whole thing. If there's a portion of that circle, that tire that's not doing so well, then the entire tire is flat and you can't ride on it, right? So It's got to be complete. And I hope that we teach young people that sort of lesson. I think it's important.
Wow. Indeed. Well, all right. So we're caught up to the part where you leave Madison Square Garden. All right. So what happened there? Well, so you told us to lead up to that point. So how has that transition been starting StandoutX?
It's everything that I think other people think. It's, oh my gosh, what am I doing? How am I going to make a living with 3 kids? Because my wife had 2 kids coming in to our marriage. So we've got 3, plus a dog, plus 2 cats. So it's like exactly a lot of mouths to feed, and life that we want to live, and everything else. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. I know that there's an opportunity in the world to do this, and I believed in myself, and I believed in the mission that if we do this right, other people are going to benefit and the money will come. Most of us worry about, let me make the money and then I'll go get the benefits, or other people will benefit from it. And I think it's backwards. I think if people come in with how can I benefit the world and help others, and then realize the money will come, it was a lesson I had to learn. And I've got the faith in doing that. So my book just launched. I finished it during COVID. When I was working from home, I was also working on the book.
Okay.
I finished it. The book has launched. We hit bestseller status in 3 categories on Amazon, which I'm super proud of.
Congratulations.
The company, thank you. I appreciate it. The company's just started. I still have to put together all the programs and the coaching and everything else that's going to go along with the book. But I didn't wait for perfect. I didn't wait for everything to be complete. I'm going to figure it out as I go. So I really focused not on myself. I focused on other people. And I know parents are struggling to help kids, get to the success in life. I know schools are certainly challenged in trying to figure it out. Right. And I just started focusing on other people, and that led me to here.
Wow. Yeah, that's vital, because by shifting the focus from you to other people who are desperately in need for the expertise that you offer, then you can't wait for perfect. If it was the focus is on you, then you can stall and try to wait till it's perfect. It's no big hurry. But when you know people are in need, like right now at this moment, you have to figure it out. You have to present what you have, and then you have to figure it out the rest.
That's exactly right. I've told people that are, that struggle with this dream that they have or whatever else. It's like, if you don't go after it, even if you're not ready, you think you're hurting yourself, but you're not. You're actually hurting the people that need your voice, need your talent, need whatever you have to offer.
Right.
And I think it's the same as parents. I mean, I think we have a responsibility to help our kids think that way. I mean, again, have them go after everything that they deserve and a success and happiness and all that stuff. But if we coach kids to go out, my whole thing is if I can coach, I've said 10 and 10. I want to impact 10 million students in 10 years. And if I can make a difference in people's lives, they're going to go out and do incredible things in the world. And it's the same as parents. If we prepare our kids with the intent of they're going to go out and do great things in the world, not make money for themselves necessarily, then the world's going to be such a better place.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So is that kind of the inspiration behind the demographics you're focusing on serving?
It is. I've spent a lot of time with students and young professionals. As part of my function at Disney, I led the recruiting efforts to get kids out of school into Disney finance and strategy. And so I went to a lot of schools to recruit, and I saw the gaps, right? I saw kids coming out, they had internships, they had good grades, they had the majors, but you could see that they weren't fully prepared for life. They certainly weren't ready for coming into a company like Disney. They just weren't ready. There was a big gap. And so between that, and then I've done a lot of work at schools like the University of Florida and others, just to try to help. There's an opportunity there, and so that's where this all came from. Was that need? And then obviously I was in that space before myself too. And if I can give back and get people quickly through that challenge of the teen, pre-college, college years, then you just imagine what they're going to go do.
Right, definitely. So when I was looking on your website, and it's designed very well, by the way. Definitely good job on that.
Thank you.
A lot stood out to me, but talk about the X factors. Mm-hmm. What are the X factors?
So my company is StandoutX, and the book itself is a playbook that you just can't go and stand out. There's a process to get there. And my company StandoutX is actually an acronym for how you stand out. And it starts with S, which is yourself, and the S, and then it ends with X, which are the X factors to stand out. So the X factors, for years, I have studied what makes certain people stand out. Like why certain athletes, people in entertainment, executives, high performers, why do some people stand out and others don't? And that's, all the research and my own experience, that's what I wrote about in the book. And ultimately you do certain things that lead up to the point of hey, it's time to prove it, right? When the time matters, stand out when it matters most.
Right.
And there's certain X factors. And so in my book, I explain 10 of them. So X factors are things like, you're the exception. That is one example, right? Because, most kids will try to do everything that everybody else does and still try to stand out. And it doesn't work that way. You can polish your resume all you want. You can practice for interviewing. You can network. You can do all these things, but you have to do something that's different than everybody else to be able to stand out, right? There's moments, there's times, there's people that just are a little bit different. And so one of the X factors is being the exception. Another one is having an expertise. Kids are graduating with sort of general knowledge, but I think people that stand out, I have seen thousands of times, they have a specific expertise and then they're really excellent at it. So imagine, someone who's they're the exception. They do things a little bit differently. They have a certain expertise that fits a niche that a company or someone else has, and then they deliver on that expertise with excellence. So the book goes through kind of 10 examples of 10 ways, and obviously the more of those 10 that you have, the better chances are you're going to stand out. But that's what the X factor is doing all these things to get to that point of importance when you're ready to stand out. That moment comes, and then there's 10 X factor things that if you do these things, you will stand out, and then, opportunity comes from there.
Wow. Fantastic. Yeah, yes, definitely a book I'm interested in reading. I'm sold.
Well, the book is interesting because I wrote the book for students and young professionals, but as I explain in the book, it's actually also for parents and leaders and school administrators and teachers because, kids can't do it by themselves. They can't read the book and that kind of thing. So the book is also it is literally a playbook, a framework for this is what, if you're if your child, your student, your employee does these things kind of, and by the way, in a certain order,
Okay.
then you're setting them up for success and for happiness. And so the book is also for parents who want to read it and say, I mean, I've had parents who have read it and have said, "Oh my gosh, I discovered my own kind of thing," right?
Right.
But it's also a way to say, "Okay, this is the playbook. I believe in this. Now let me help my kid, my child, my employee, my student by kind of walking through this framework." And it gives them a way to then take what they know, the experiences that they have. I'm talking about the parent or whatever, the experiences they have, the advice that they have, the knowledge they have, filter it through this playbook, and then use that to teach kids. And I think it's really powerful. So it's helpful for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. And regarding the being the exception, I think that's something that's not really emphasized enough to youth, because they're taught to do the basics and the things that, like I said, everyone else is doing those things as well. But what can you do to think outside the box to make you stand out? And that's why I like that your book cover a lot too. How it had the one plane in a different color flying,
taken off,
taken out. Yeah, exactly. I really like that.
If I had to simplify it for everyone listening, I would say if you kind of look at your hand, right, you've got 5 fingers, right, and if you want to know how you stand out, I think it's represented. There's 5 primary things, and it's sort of represented by each of the fingers, and so these are in order as well. So the first thing, you just mentioned it, you have to be different. So to me, that's the thumb, right? To be different, you have to be yourself, because there's 8 billion people in the world, and nobody has the same DNA makeup, the same experiences, the same story that you have. So you're unique. So you have to leverage that difference. So being different is number one. And it's the thumb. Give yourself a thumbs up, because it's okay to be you and you're different. So that's number one. Number 2 then is preparation. And that's the index finger. And preparation is really about focus and focusing on and being prepared for that thing, the thing that you need to do. And so it's the index finger, because you're pointing, you're focusing on that thing, right? So if you're different, thumb, you're prepared, the index finger. The middle finger, which, think about the middle finger, there's a lot of passion around using the middle finger, right? So, but if you think about that passion a little bit differently, the middle finger, which is right in the middle of your hand, it's all about excellence. It's about I am going to show you how awesome and excellent I am, right? And so I've got this passion to show you what it is. And so think about being different. You're prepared for the moment. You're excellent in that moment. The ring finger is the finger where you have your ring on, right? It's the value finger. It's where all the ladies have the nice rocks and the rings and everything on their finger, right? This
the bling bling.
The bling bling, right? So if you're providing value, benefit to somebody else, and then the last is your pinky finger, which if you've ever hurt your finger or your hand, the pinky finger is the most sensitive, right? It's the one that hurts the most if you hit it or something. And so that's about emotions. And if someone is different, they're prepared better than everybody else. They deliver on that with excellence. They add value to the company, to the person, or to whatever it is that they're doing, and they move people's emotions, then they're going to be memorable. And in that moment, you stand out. So I think if you have to boil it down, it's the 5 keys to standing out. And if we teach that to kids and employees and everything else, I think, they're going to go out and do great things.
Wow. Love it. That's pretty awesome. And I had the opportunity to read the Magic Kingdom book. And that's one thing why I was so excited about interviewing you, because I know to be a Disney employee, you have to be a remarkable storyteller. And you haven't disappointed. You definitely a remarkable storyteller. You're very.
So was that Dan Cockrell's book?
I believe so.
Culture in the Kingdom.
Yeah, I was jealous. Wow, I wish I would have worked at Disney. At least for a summer.
Dan's a good friend of mine. We worked together a lot when I was at Disney, and he's another great person to follow. His dad was working for Disney for a while, and he left and did his own kind of leadership thing, and now Dan's doing it. And he did the same thing. He walked away from his Disney career to, help with leadership and culture and customer experience and all. And it's another good book. You should definitely, people should read that if you like to
Yeah,
that
it's
kind of
a
stuff.
fantastic book. But yeah, definitely just how just the Disney culture is just phenomenal. And like I said, storytelling is so powerful, and it's something obviously you've mastered. And then also just making concepts just so clear and simple. So something like the 5 fingers, the 5 keys of success is something that it's easy to remember, but it's such a powerful really framework to let you know. Hey,
you know, what's really interesting. You mentioned culture. I should share this with you. And I know I'm kind of off topic here a little bit.
No. Yeah.
But I would say here's a challenge to everybody. Like, we love to study company culture and we love to understand culture and like Disney's culture and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Think about this. We do not understand the culture in our own home.
Yeah. Family culture. Yeah.
Family culture, home culture. Like, what is the culture in your home? Is it a reward and, growth and encouragement culture, or is it a, punishment and, what kind of culture do you have? Because, anyone who's worked in a company or done anything else, that culture is the people that are around you, the employee that you are, the leader that you have, and the culture that you surround everything with drives all the success in the world. And I don't think we look at culture in our own homes very well.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And my wife and I have read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families. And after doing that, we decided to take one of the things they did in the book is like creating basically a family book, like a family values book, and really defining what is our culture, what do we stand for, and what are activities that's important to us, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, that's so important. I think I rarely hear people talk about their family culture.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, we read it regularly where we have to remind ourselves, okay, make sure kind of that we're staying on track and we're aligning to our values. And now being a new dad, my daughter just turned 1. It's like, I just realized just how important it is. We want to instill those values early and set that foundation. Best leaders for her. Roles.
It's important. We do the same thing in our house. We have kind of in the middle of the first floor. There's a set of stairs that has like a landing. Like, you go up like 10 stairs. There's like a landing, and then it turns, and there's like a couple more stairs to go up to the second floor. And we have 2 signs, kind of things. One is right there at the landing. So every time you go up the stairs, the last thing you see at night or whatever there's 3 words about, living and loving and enjoying life. Right. So there's like that. And then on the way down, our family values are on another, that you walk down and there's like a wall right in front at the bottom of the stairs, and you turn right to go to the kitchen, or you turn left to go to the study and go out to the front door. And when they come down the stairs, they see it. So you see the 3 words on your way up to go to bed, and then every time they come downstairs, the values are right there at the bottom of the stairs on the wall. You can't miss it.
That's fantastic. And notice a lot of sport teams do things like that, where they'll have where it's visual, where it just reinforces those values.
That's right.
Really good idea.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah, exactly.
Indeed. Well, John, also you mentioned earlier about just some of the gaps you identify when you're working with college students as they're graduating, and just knowing that, hey, they were not ready to transition into really corporate America, for example. What were some of those gaps that you...
In my book, I talk about 5 primary, problems. One is, and we touched on one of them, that they're just not ready, right? Kids are coming out of school and they don't even have a budget. They don't know, when they're filling out their tax forms on day 1 of the job, am I claiming 0, 1, 2 exempt? Like, how many exemptions do I claim? They're just not ready, right, for the job. Right. So that's one. The second one is, and it's probably one of the most important, is they're not really themselves.
Okay.
They are either taking jobs, or they're what their parents have told them they want them to be, or society has said this is what you need to do. They're just not themselves, which is why in my company, in my book, self is the number one important thing, right? So I think people are trying to be something that they're not. Oh, yeah. The third is that there are unfair comparisons, meaning that they're coming out and they're seeing on social media, these really successful people, and they think that they just got there without seeing all the hard work and all the stuff that really happens behind the scenes. And so I think they're comparing. The quote I love is, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20, right? But it's hard not to do that. So they've got these unfair comparisons, and by the way, they also have these unfair comparisons to their own expectations. Like they expect to come out and get a certain job at a certain money and do a certain thing. Yeah. So there's a gap in just the comparison to their own expectations. So that's the third. I think the fourth is that there's a sense of pressure to be perfect all the time. There's so many books and talk out there about high performance, and we love to talk about all the accomplishments of our kids and everything else, and our kids, because of that, are under so much pressure to succeed, so much. And so I think there's this feeling of just having to be great all the time, which is why I love Standout, because in order to stand out, you just have to do it when it matters most. There are just certain moments when you have to stand out. You don't have to be perfect all the time. So that's the fourth. And the last one is, which I think is probably a really important one. It's the primary reason why I wrote the book, which is anything you ever want to know is out there. I mean, you can Google it, you can talk to someone, you can read a book, you can, watch stuff on YouTube, everything you want to know. But there's so much information that you don't know how to actually digest it and say, what does it mean? Kids are getting bombarded with advice and this from the parents and this from their peers and whatever else. And so I think hopefully what my book and what my company's trying to do is simplify. This is what you need to know. It really boils down to these, 8 or 9 things in this order. What you have to do now is just kind of figure out for you how to, plug some of the advice that you get into this framework. And so I think that's it. They're coming out just, real quick. They're not ready. They're comparing themselves unfairly. They're not themselves. They get this feeling of pressure to be great all the time. And then it's more advice than they know what to do with. And I think those are the problems that we're trying to help solve.
Fantastic. Yeah. I totally agree. And then also with the unfair comparisons with social media is, like I say, they don't see behind the scenes. So someone can paint a picture of their life being perfect on social media, but in reality, it can be in shambles. You just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You just see what they're presenting to you. And then if you're comparing yourself to this facade, it's just a losing battle.
Yeah, totally. So I did a talk at the University of Florida last year. Actually, it was earlier this year. It was back in February, and I showed my life in pictures. And it was Madison Square Garden. I showed a picture of my apartment on the 55th floor, corner apartment, 55th floor on this high-rise building with these beautiful views of New York City. My corner office that looked down on Madison Square Garden, I could see like the Freedom Tower and the Statue of Liberty, and
living the dream.
Living the dream, like this beautiful home, the beautiful home that I had in Florida. Yeah. We've got this amazing backyard that we've kind of built and stuff, and like everyone's like, oh my gosh! But then I showed the other side of it, which is all of the travel and all of the pressure and the I'm not being with my kids and all the unhappiness, and I told the story about how the most unhappy time of my life was at that moment, because I was still at MSG at the time.
Right.
Was now, not when I was homeless. Because at least when I was homeless, like you said, but we talked before, it's like it was a simple life, right?
Right.
You realize the basic things that you really need. Yeah, it was challenging, but it was actually harder as a senior vice president because it's not about these fancy, flashy things. And I really painted the picture of the other side of it. And I hope people understand that for everything that you see, that's this wild, crazy success and all, there is a bigger story behind it that you don't see.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. Wow. Well, John, you're giving us a lot of gems over this past, during this time period. As we get ready to wrap up this interview, give opportunity to leave the parents with any closing words of advice.
I applaud you for being a parent. I mean, it's one of the hardest jobs there is. It's one of the most thankless jobs that there is, and the pay is not very good. But if you want to stand out, you'll stand out by the person that your kids become and the things that you do the values that you impart, the wisdom that you give, that is your legacy, right? And that is how you are going to stand out. And I think we have a responsibility as parents to stand out every single day because our kids are watching us. They're not listening to us. They are watching us. And so I think if people just do the best that they can, live the best life as an example for your kids are going to go on and do great things.
Fantastic advice. And just reiterate that it may not listen as much, but they're certainly watching. Yes, indeed. Love that. Well, John, you talked a lot about your book. Where can people get your book? And then also what would be the best contact if people want to reach out to you?
I'm on Instagram at John Walsh. It's all together _standout. You can follow me on Facebook as well. It's John Walsh not underscore this time, Standout Movement. I'm on LinkedIn, and then my website is standoutmovement.com. And if you go there, you can order the book and all. And then if you sort of follow us, then we're going to start rolling out training programs. We're going to do events. We're going to have coaching. We're going to have a whole bunch of things that are based on the book. And so, there's a lot to come as we grow this company. So that's how you can follow us.
Fantastic. Well, I'll certainly be following and plan to pick up your book. Congratulations again on the success.
Thank you.
And yeah, I know you're going to continue to do great things and make a remarkable impact. And some of you mentioned earlier, do the right thing for the right people. So
that's right.
I wish you all the best, John.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. It's good to see you again.
You've been listening to Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Hosted by Darrich Phillips. Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. We get it. That's why Darrich interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. That's why we do the show. Be sure to share Mentor Select with other parents of teens. Follow us on social media at Mentor Select to stay up to date on the latest tips, strategies, and resources for parenting teens. Send your questions and comments to Darrich at mentorselect.com. Tune in every Wednesday for new episodes. Till next time, this is Mentor Select.